What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out a video with a title that makes no sense. Actually, does make sense. It's Americans are taking over Europe. Yeah. Aren't Americans used to taking over things? Sorry, you probably don't get that, but everyone who is actually in the United States, or majority people, probably 90% of the population started from immigration. So, yeah. Yeah, you get that now. But either ways, let's get right into this video, guys. Thank you for watching, and yeah, please do like and subscribe, and tell me what you feel about this video in the comment section after you actually at least watch 60% of this video.
If you walk in the streets of Valencia, you'll pick up English, but not just any English, American English.
Speak the right way, the American way.
Valencia is one of the most international cities in the whole of Spain. It's a tourism hotspot. It has multiple universities and English language schools. And it's becoming one of the favorite destinations for Americans in both Spain and in Europe. And I'm here to investigate a topic that you might have seen on YouTube before. There is an entire subgenre of YouTubers praising the European way of life and escaping the United States. I initially thought this might be just a media trend, since complaining about your country seems like a sure way to get those sweet clicks and views. But when I took a look at the numbers and started talking to Americans who made the move,
they still have their homes in the US.
I learned that it's not just the vloggers that are coming here. Instead, it's the story of what seems like a growing trickle of Americans emigrating to Europe. New visas, online work, and an increasingly English-speaking Europe have lowered the threshold to come, while the United States is becoming a more unhospitable country.
On the latest outbreak of gun violence,
the trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids.
The Supreme Court ruled to end Roe v. Wade.
While the United States has prided itself on the promise of the American dream, and for many remains a land of opportunity, could it be that its neglect of social policy is coming back to bite it? And might Europe's bet on quality of life finally be paying economic dividends? Since its founding, the United States has been a country of immigration, with more than 1 million people migrating to the country in 2022. But the United States is also becoming a country of emigration. Before I go out into the city, I have a couple of graphs to show you to give you an idea of how significant this transformation is. Americans have historically not been the globe-trotting types. After all, the United States has everything you could wish for: cities with varying climates, diverse geography, and jobs and opportunity aplenty. In fact, in 1999, the Economist wrote that educated Americans were the least likely people to leave their country. But over the past 2 decades, the number of passports issued by the United States has boomed, particularly after the 2007 financial crisis, and what I can only assume...
So in 2019, COVID was the reason. Well, 2019 was not COVID, actually. Why did it decrease so much in 2019? COVID started in 2019, but it got to the United States in 2020. Was it March? I don't remember. But it got to the United States in 2020. It was not in 2019. It started in 2019. What could have caused that in 2019?
Is the aftermath of the 2016 US presidential elections, which was won by Donald Trump. Today, some 40% of Americans have a passport, and some have used it to cross the Atlantic to make their way to Europe. And if you're an American looking to move to Europe, or a European like me who's constantly on the move, then today's sponsor, Speakly, is just what you've been looking for. I personally don't have the time to take language class. You can spread your... Quite hard to get join the annual subscription. Now back to the video. So the data I found on American migration is imperfect. It turns out it's quite hard to get a precise number. I thought of looking at the number of registered voters, granted visas, or permanent residents. For the latter, it shows a steady increase in Americans having permanent residency in Europe, with their favorite destinations being the south of the continent, particularly Spain, Italy, and Portugal. If we look at other data, there would apparently be 200,000 Americans living in France alone, versus about 40,000 if you look at the number of permanent residents. But I have a hunch that the number of Americans is greater than that for the whole of Europe, especially because of the time it takes to get more permanent status. Some Americans basically move between European countries every 90 days while they wait for the slow wheels of Europe's bureaucracies to do their work. Yet throughout all these different metrics...
That's messy! Because you can be in the countries in Europe for 90 days without a visa. if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so yeah, I get that. That's tricky though. I didn't even thought about that. But that's mad tricky.
Thing is clear. The number of American expats migrating to Europe is increasing. And there are multiple, often personal stories for that. But they boil down to Europe simply being a better place to live. Now, I could go through all the reasons and show you graphs for why that is, like social mobility, cheaper education, access to healthcare, maternity leave, or work-life balance. I could also show you maps of walkable cities. Yeah, I know that it's kind of a Euroflex. Others come to leverage this, the American dollar, through geo-arbitrage.
There's something called geo-arbitrage, which basically means you can take what you earn in one place and move to another place that's cheaper and leverage it.
Named App of the Year and Editor's Choice. Available on Windows, iPad, and Mac. Liquid Text goes beyond.
Americans earn more in absolute terms and the euro has fallen relative to the dollar. American incomes and savings can get more bang for their buck here. But based off the...
Really? But I thought the euro was more powerful than the US dollar. Isn't it? I don't really get what he's saying right here regarding the US dollars and your savings and all of that compared to Europe, because isn't it more expensive here in Europe? My experience it is, but I don't know.
The people I've talked to here, there is one reason that stands out more than the rest. Safety.
I was also worried that if I went to a grocery store, was I going to get shot?
We know 5 people in the Seattle area, they were shot in a parking lot.
Well, this is a safe place to have kids.
Carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Who would have thought that keeping themselves and their kids safe would be so high on people's list of priorities? And as it turns out, European countries are more than willing to...
I'm not even gonna hold you. Like, I saw something the other day and I wasn't very pleased with it. However, it is a perfect example of an unfortunate comparison with the US. So it actually makes me a little bit depressed saying this. I saw this kid, right? She was a young girl. She probably was like 7. And I was saying to myself, it is literally dark outside here in Finland. I'm happy that she's not being targeted by anyone. But I said to myself, if I had a kid, even if this is Finland, I don't care. I'm not allowing her, a little young girl, to be outside in the dark, walking by herself like a lost child. She's not lost, but she's just roaming. You know what I mean? I went to check the mail and I was like, what the hell, bro? No, because I can't, I got trust issues, man. I got PTSD. And this is a perfect example because it is indeed the truth that Europe, your child is a lot safer. Maybe not the UK, right? But in Europe, EU type Europe, they're a lot safer. Like they'll get, you know, into issues every now and then, but it's a lot safer. You know, school shootings and stuff like that. It's a lot safer for real. You can't even lie about it. It's the truth.
Oblige these American migrants. They're educated, seen as culturally compatible, and while there is definitely a pool of retirees coming to enjoy a golden retirement, according to the stats, most are young and potentially valuable contributors to Europe's aging societies and government deficits. In the south of Europe, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece have all set up digital nomad visas with substantial tax concessions in the hope of attracting remote workers to increase their tax bases. It's perfect for remote working Americans doing geographic arbitrage. But it has caused some backlash. Not just Americans, but also Europeans like myself that have come to live here, raise prices on rent as internationals are able to price out locals, like in Portugal where housing prices have increased by 40%, which has been blamed on mostly Americans coming to the country. And it's been trial and error to find winning recipes for these countries. Portugal scrapped its golden visa, which allowed free access to the country for a $600,000 investment, after mostly American investors started hoarding real estate.
Seriously, they no, put that thing back. What the hell, man? No, you can't do that, Portugal. No. Nah, you gotta let the boys with the money get what they want, man. Come on. It's just a milli though. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, right? But yeah, whatever. No, I can't believe that they actually, you know, ended that.
And drove up housing prices. But in the north of Europe, it's a different story. After all, it doesn't make a lot of sense to live there as a digital nomad since life is much more expensive and the weather is just terrible. Instead, these countries seem to be attracting a different cohort of Americans who are integrating much more into local economic life. In Amsterdam, one of continental Europe's more cosmopolitan cities, it's actually hard to find Dutch-speaking waiters. Settling down for Americans is much easier there, where English fluency is greater and where there are actually English-speaking jobs, owing to the export and trade-oriented economies of the North and the American investment in those countries. Recently, this has even created problems for top-tier jobs at the EU when Americans apply. And while the benefits of those migrants are clear, as with other immigrants, there's one important question. Will they integrate locally? After all, in Spain, like much of Southern Europe, there's little hope for additional American workers to integrate locally into the economy.
Obviously, you could work for a Spanish company, there's that back door, but that's extremely difficult because even Spaniards can't work for Spanish companies.
So the people coming here remain in a parallel, internationally focused economy, whereas in the north of the continent, where the economy and society is much more English-speaking, there is much more hope for Americans to fit in. Especially since on the cultural side, Americans are notoriously bad at other languages, and may, like many expats in new countries, judge that their English is enough to get around. But there's something I wanted to know. Is this American migration a potential silver bullet to some of Europe's biggest problems, like its place in the global competition for talent and for its aging population? Well, when it comes to talent, there are these lofty articles about the death of Silicon Valley and how engineers may relocate to Europe, as well as new startup laws in Spain or France, where European countries hope to attract global and American talent to bring much needed dynamism to their economies. But so far, American founders haven't flocked to Europe. It's more the disillusioned American upper middle class that is coming to the continent. European bureaucracy and taxes means that the United States are still the kings of business. But where it could also have an impact is on the emigration of Europeans to the United States. There are fewer Europeans applying for permanent residence. However, since it's mostly young people that immigrate, this may also be a result of an aging Europe. There are just fewer people in the age group to emigrate to the United States. So once again, this is a bit inconclusive. But what remains true out of all of this is that 40% of America's 230 million people are entitled to European citizenship through ancestry. Some will likely choose to vote with their feet. That's a pool of educated, culturally compatible.
I would love to know about this ancestry stuff because, like, man, I don't know about it. I just don't know about it. And whether you believe it or not, like, a lot of people are linked, obviously with ancestry. They get right back there, right? Man, it's crazy.
Workers that European countries could potentially tap into. But as it happens, it also is likely to reinforce the cultural and family bonds between both sides of the Atlantic. And it's something that could have deep implications on the languages spoken in Europe, and particularly how dominant English would become. While the volumes are relatively small, this first wave of American immigrants is a sign of what could potentially come. While right now, Europe seems to be a refuge for Americans looking for a better life rather than economic opportunity, and there are economic benefits to reap, if European countries can get their act together and offer a more friendly business environment, then it's possible that it's not just the middle class that would jump ship. But what do you think? Is offering good quality of life a suitable strategy? And can countries like Spain offer enticing offers to attract wealthy, educated, and entrepreneurial Americans?
Yeah,
Let
they
me know
can.
what you think in the comments down below.
They can. They just got to play with that tax a little bit, That's a little bit, what I'm saying, little write-off, little stuff, whatever. Anyways, man, yeah, this was a very interesting video. I can't lie to you. Y'all can let me know what y'all think about this whole situation in the comment section down below. Let me see what this comment says. This seems to ignore that for almost all European countries, net migration is towards the US, despite the US having a much larger population than any single European country. And since a higher proportion of American immigrants are retirees, it's still an overall loss of skilled workers for most European country. And since a higher proportion of Americans immigrants are retirees, it's still well, we'll see how it goes, man. Seems like a little crazy thing going on here, man. But yeah, without further ado, guys, I'm out of here. Peace.